get started.
All right.
Okay, super. And I'm going to open with prayer for you for the session tonight. The Lord be with you. Reading from the Brotherhood Collect. Almighty God, who gave such grace to your apostle Andrew that he readily obeyed the call of your Son, Jesus Christ, and brought his brother with him. Give us who are called by your holy word grace to follow him without delay, and to bring those near to us into his gracious presence, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
All right, brothers, good evening. We're going to have our session tonight, and our presenter is in his vehicle, returning home from an emergency, family emergency, and he's gracious enough to stay with us. Hopefully, he'll stay safe on the road in Austin, Texas, which in itself on the road is a challenge,
right,
having lived in Austin before. Tonight we have Rob, and Rob Dyer is the CEO for a program called the Georgetown Project. And I'm going to introduce Rob by kind of giving a background of how we came to ask Rob to be our presenter tonight. Some years ago, I was a resident of the same area, Georgetown, and one of my close colleagues, who was a former superintendent in Texas, had been asked by the Georgetown City Council to head up a task force dealing with adolescent substance abuse. In the course of working with the task force, they ran across an odd number of young people who were, as he described, homeless. In fact, they had 138 of them in Georgetown and Williamson County at that time. As you can probably imagine, there was a little bit of denial by the city fathers and not sure that this number was accurate. And some of the first questions would come out are, where are their parents, and why aren't their parents taking care of them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there is an act in Congress called the McKinney-Vento Act that describes the kind of youth that Rob works with in Georgetown. It's youth experiencing homelessness. And that means that there are many kids in our community that are couch surfing, living in the car, sometimes camping out under bridges, a number of places. They're all over the place. And the issue is that they don't want people to know. There's a great deal of need for anonymity because some of these kids are really from what we would call okay families, but there's some sort of dissonance going on. Anyway, this number evolved into a project called the Georgetown Project. And I'll introduce Rob by saying he has been with the project for a number of years and has worked with the Georgetown Project that deals with this particular category of youth. And I will mention before turning it over to him that in your community, you have these same kind of youth. They're all over. And that's why we have this federal legislation, the McKinney-Vento Act. And Rob, thank you so much for agreeing to be our presenter tonight. And you're free to talk and take questions however you want to structure it from this point forward.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with y'all tonight. Can you hear me okay? I think you said earlier it was okay, but does the sound good?
Yeah, we're good. You're good.
Okay, good. I am parked in my car, by the way, at a Starbucks, so I'm okay. I'm not on Mopac, which is
okay.
what most people in Austin, taking their life in their hands every day on their way home. But so I've been with the Georgetown Project. I've worked with the Georgetown Project off and on for a number of years. I've been the CEO for the past year. Prior to that, I worked for the Georgetown Independent School District for 30 years. And I was a school teacher coach, school administrator, principal of several schools. I opened 3 schools in my career. So I've been at various facets of public education with kids for my entire career, and have worked often with the Georgetown Project, and know Gene Davenport. Gene and I were Rotarians together at one point, and he's a great guy, and I'm really appreciative of him for referring me to you guys and letting me talk tonight. So the Georgetown Project, Gene was a big catalyst with with the Georgetown Project. And what the Georgetown Project is, it was actually a partnership between the city and the school district and community members, Southwestern University. And so a group of folks got together and they realized actually 28 years ago that there were a lot of issues happening around teens, children, and youth in Georgetown. And they weren't, many of them, they weren't being addressed, or there weren't ways to address them. And so the Georgetown Project was formed as a way to identify needs in the community, and then our task is to find ways to meet those needs. So we have over the years started programs, partnered with organizations on programs, created opportunities, you name it, and the Georgetown Project has either done it or has had a hand in it in order to support children and youth in Georgetown. We actually run several programs of our own, as well as some that we've started and passed on. And so we kind of say we're cradle to career, really. Our programs start with Bridges to Growth, which is a parenting program for young parents and new parents, and it's a toddler training program to get the young ones ready to start school. So we're trying to get kids school ready. We have an elementary summer program that was created because folks in Georgetown realized that there weren't opportunities for kids to have, they were staying at home in the summer. There weren't camps and things like that kids could go to, and so not a lot of childcare. So we started a program called Kid City, and that's run through the city of Georgetown now, but it's been around for 20-something years, and that provides childcare for kids in the summer in a camp-like setting. And then we have a program we started that we just handed over to the school district. We've run it for about 15 years, and it's called ASAP, and it's the After School Action Program for middle schoolers. And so what that program does, it provides opportunities and experiences for middle school kids before and after school. And then the high school program we run is called the Nest, and that's our biggest program currently. And the Nest is the program that Gene was really involved in the beginning as well, with where we provide a safe place for high school kids to go after school. So during the week, on the weekdays, we're there till some of the kids get out at 3, some get out at 4, and the high school kids, and they come over to the Nest, and which is across the street from Georgetown High School, actually. And kids from Eastview High School and Rocharte High School bus over to us, and we provide a safe place after school for kids to go who need a safe place. A lot of our kids are unhoused or homeless. They, not all, but quite a few of them. Georgetown ISD has about 100 students right now that are classified formally as students who are homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act. I can guarantee you there are more than that don't they're couch surfing, or they're not in their homes with their parents. So we have any students who are at risk or who need a place to go can come to the Nest after school, and we provide counseling services. We provide job readiness skills. We feed everybody a hot dinner every night. So we have wonderful organizations in the community, from businesses and corporations and banks and families and churches and civic groups, who provide a dinner every night for 30 to 35 folks. And we feed all of our kids and the volunteers who are there, and everybody gets a hot meal every night, and the kids all sit around the table together and have conversations, family style. And so that's part of this program as well. And we get kids resources. So we work to get kids, if they need new shoes, or if they need shoes for work, or work attire, or a suit to go interview, or whatever it might be, we get kids those resources one way or the other. And so another program that we run that's evolved out of the Nest, but it's run through the Nest, is the Georgetown Project Summer Youth Employment Program. And this is a really great program that we started because we realized that a lot of kids, especially kids who are at risk and kids who are homeless and they don't have folks at home. And I'll talk a little bit more about our students who are homeless or who are unhoused in a minute. But the Summer Youth Employment Program, what it does is it gives kids their first real job. And by that, I mean a career-worthy, professional type of summer job. And so, we all had that part-time job when we were younger, bussing tables or whatever it might be. And those are fine for kids to make money. They provide an income, to a point, but they're not living wage jobs. And so what we do is we try to get kids in with the city of Georgetown and attorneys' offices and banks and CPA firm and local retail, auto mechanics, car dealerships. I'm trying to think. Well, I've got a builder that we got somebody that's going to work with. I have several students that went to Samsung this last year. We have a big new Samsung plant that opened in Taylor, Texas, and so we were able to get kids placed there as well. And so we get kids into jobs that are going to lead to a career. And that's it's hard for kids to get into jobs like that. The attorney we work with, he probably would never have hired one of our high school students had we not gone and talked with him and got him in the program. And so we have a grant that pays these salaries for the kids. So it's a win-win. It's an economic investment for the community, but it's a win for the businesses. They don't have to pay the salary. We pay it through the Georgetown Project, and so and they get an employee out of it, and hopefully that will lead to a permanent job, or it'll lead to a career for a kid. So an example of that is I had a student working with an attorney this last summer, and he helped the attorney win a couple of cases, and work with his clients, and I guarantee you that young man will go to law school at some point. He told me that he was never interested in law and really had no idea what he needed. He probably would never have been in a law firm except maybe as a client at some point. However, now because this young man was able to have that opportunity, we were able to get him with an attorney, and he had a real job working for the attorney, and so anyway, that's going to spur on a career in the legal field for him in some form or fashion, possibly even law enforcement or something like that. But anyway, it was there are really great stories from each of our kids and from the business owners that talk about what a great opportunity things like that are for kids. And so that's what the Georgetown Project does, is we bring all these folks together, and we provide resources, and we get people connected with resources, and we provide opportunities for kids. So talking about kids who are homeless, I think the biggest hurdle for communities that I've seen and is for communities, as you said, accepting the fact that there are kids that are homeless in the community. And I have, we have some. Every community does. It doesn't matter if it's Beverly Hills or Austin, Texas, or Farwell, Texas, where I grew up. There are going to be kids that, that don't have a place to live. And so how it starts, oftentimes, and I can tell you, from my prior position, I was the principal of Rasharte High School here in Georgetown, which is Georgetown ISD's academic alternative school of choice. So it's not a discipline school, it's an accelerated high school. And it's a high school where kids can apply to go, and it's part of the independent school district here, so it's a public school. And kids apply to go to graduate early. So a lot of times our kids were, they were young parents, teen parents themselves, or they were on their own and working full time, needing to go to, have a varied schedule or whatever it was. And so I did that for 7 years prior to going to the Georgetown Project. And what I realized after my second or third year there, we started realizing that we had about 10 or 15 kids that year that had lost one or both of their parents, and so their parents were deceased. And so we started a support group, and then other kids kind of rose up, and they were like, they didn't live with their parents either. They didn't live with sometimes they might live with a grandparent, or it might be an aunt or uncle, or a boyfriend's mom and dad, or girlfriend's mom and dad, or a friend's couch, or whatever. But we figured out that over half of the kids at Rasharte High School, we always there's always 100 kids there. They graduate all the time. They come and go. So we serve 300 to 400 kids a year. But at any given time, Rasharte High School has over half of its students who do not live with either of their natural parents or biological parents. And so if you think about that, I have 3 daughters. My oldest is graduated from UT, and she's super smart. And my middle one is very smart also. She's in school in San Marcos. My youngest one is very smart as well. She's in high school still. But I'll tell you, it took my wife and I both to help our daughters apply for college, to help them go through the college application process. The process is so difficult and so convoluted. and incredibly complicated. And so, you know, for two parents who have college degrees and graduate degrees, my wife's a CPA. I've have a master's degree and part of a PhD. It was pretty darn hard for me to fill out a college application for my kid. It was to help her fill it out. I didn't fill it out for her. I helped her fill it out. You know, and so that just tells you how difficult it is if you don't have parents, you know, a mom and dad at home a mom or a dad at home who can help their kids get onto that next level, whether it's trade school, technical school, college, university, whatever, or a job. You know, it's very difficult. So imagine, you know, when you've got half the kids in your school, you're put yourself in my shoes as a principal, and you've got half of the kids in your school who don't live with either parent. That means there's nobody at home helping that kid apply for college or apply for scholarships or, you know, figure out the process. I can tell you, when I started a PhD program at Texas A&M about 8 years ago, it was quite difficult for me to figure out how to get transcripts sent to that university. And I'm a relatively smart person. So, you know, it's a difficult process in general. I don't know if we have any Aggies out there. It may be partly because Texas A&M is, you know, they are a little bit complicated on certain things. So maybe they have a more difficult process than other universities, but I don't think it's that much more difficult. It's hard to get, it's really hard to navigate some of those systems. So, you know, anyway, we realized that we've got a lot of kids out there that they you know, they may be truly homeless, sleeping under a bridge, in a car. We had a lot of kids that slept in cars, you know, families that were sleeping in cars. What's more common is kids are surfing from couch to couch, staying with friend to friend. You know, those kids they don't have a home. I mean, it's not their home, and so they're there by the grace and mercy of a kind family or somebody. And so, you know, they don't have that parent at home either, who's helping take care of them and helping them navigate life here in 2025. And so, we realized that, you know, that's a pretty large number of kids from a school when over half your kids don't live with either parent. And so what happens in those situations? I had two brothers actually a couple years ago. They both were living in an RV, in an RV out by Eastview High School here in Georgetown. And we'd help our kids get food. You know, we'd send food home on the weekends. We'd feed them at school. We feed them at the nest after school, and then of course they go home to an empty house or to no house, or in this case an RV. And so we'd send food home with them, you know, and there'd be bags of food. And one of the brothers came to me one day and said, "Mr. Dyer, you know, this is really great that you're giving us these cans of food and things like that." He said, "But we don't have a can opener. I don't have a way to open a can, and I don't have propane to run the stove here in the RV, so we can't really cook anything. All I've got is a microwave." And so, you know, you just think about how difficult, just the challenges of overcoming how to cook a meal if you're in that situation. You know, and I mean, these were kids from a wonderful family. Both parents were deceased. The dad was killed in a car accident, and the mother died of cancer. They had lived with an uncle who didn't take care of them and pretty much just threw them out in an RV on their own, you know, and so they were working full time trying to support themselves. Obviously they don't have high school diplomas yet, so they're not making a lot of money. And so, you know, that's just a typical story and that's how kids become homeless, or young folks become homeless, is they go through this trajectory of you know, family changes, life changes, whatever they are, and then get to a point where they're, you know, surfing couches and staying with friends, and then eventually that gets old, and, you know, families can't continue to have a kid living with them probably for, you know, an extended period of time, and so eventually they're out on their own, and just like these two boys were that I worked with. So that's a pretty common scenario for kids that are homeless, and I promise you, you know, I'd bet every penny I've got on it. There are homeless kids in every single school district across this entire nation. If we have them in Georgetown, Texas, which is a wealthy school district and a wealthy community, you know, every school district and community has kids that are not living with their parents and that are unhoused. So anyway, the Georgetown Project was created to help it help address issues like this and make lives better for kids. So the Nest program that we run, it really is a unique. It's a pretty unique model, and it's really a gem. We have folks from all over the place that come to see what we do, and so we have a social worker that works there. She's my coordinator, and then we have another full-time person and an assistant. We do get some grants to run these programs, so most of our programs are grant funded or we fundraise for them. So if anybody out there is has a need to donate some money, trust me, the Georgetown Project is a great place to do that. But that's how we run our programs. Is we apply for grants and are awarded grants through different organizations, and then we fundraise. But what we do is we have staff that are paid staff that come in and work with the kids and provide social work, mental health services, and mentoring, really a lot of mentoring. And so we have had really great successes with our kids, and I think one of the biggest successes, we have a 100% high school graduation rate for our kids who have been through the Nest for 13 years now, and that's a pretty big accomplishment and a pretty. We're really proud of that. It's not an easy task and an easy feat, and so we've worked hard to help kids get across that stage. We realized this last year, or we realized over the last few years, that we put a lot of effort into getting kids to that high school diploma, but then what happens next? And so through the Georgetown Project, we're bringing in some programs. We started a GED program for Georgetown because that was something that wasn't happening for folks who need one. So we saw that need and then brought that in. But we're now bringing in post-secondary education opportunities. Like I'm starting a medical, it's phlebotomy and medical assistant and or medication management and CNA, the nurse's assistant. So we're starting that program this fall for kids that as they're finishing up at the Nest, or any kid in Georgetown can go to, or anybody really. So we're starting that because that's a living wage job that pays pretty well in our area. And then we're starting an HVAC, a heating and air, and plumbing and electrical certification program, and we're going to do that at night this next year, in this next fall. And our plan is to get kids into that as well, because that's a great career field for folks if they want to work hard and they'll make a lot of money and do really well in the heating and air business or the plumbing business or the electrical business. So we're going to work on those certifications for kids, but that's our first two. We've got other plans for other certifications to work with kids on. We're bringing in things that people can get in 2 months or 3 months, and so that's really the game changer for folks, for our kids, is if we can get them that higher ed of some kind, whether it's technical or trade or whatever it is. That's a life changer for kids and for folks that are living at the poverty level and who are at risk. So that's kind of the Georgetown Project in a nutshell. And our programs, we have a lot of community support. Georgetown's one of those places where the whole community sort of wraps around the schools and the kids. We bring a group of nonprofit folks together every month and share resources, and we actually even raise money with other nonprofits. So we partner to even do that. So there's not a competition to do that. We all sort of work together, to provide services for people in the community. So anyway, that's the Georgetown Project pretty much in a nutshell.
Rob, thank you. There's a couple of other things that go on with projects like this, and they're in every community. And that is, many of the kids that wind up in this homeless environment or experiencing homelessness are very careful to not share that with a lot of people.
That's right.
Anonymity is something they really pride. So a kid will walk in and they don't want everybody to know that they're experiencing homelessness. They want to finish high school. So part of the challenge that you have in a program like Rob's is making sure you can be a trustworthy environment to help them out and not violate their anonymity that they have. And every community has them, and as Rob says. And so one of the things that I hope that all of you will at least think about is that thinking about your community where you have, and then finding out where those kids are and how they're doing. If we don't intervene, as Rob's program does, these kids become vulnerable and subject to one dropping out or becoming part of what the predator network winds up doing, getting a
Human
hold of
trafficking.
them.
Yep,
Yes,
human
human
trafficking.
trafficking. Do you have any questions for Rob?
And I
Go
have had
ahead.
two students actually that did have that we had two students last year that were trafficked that we helped rescue, and that's a very real risk that kids are facing.
Yeah.
Keith Purser, you have a question?
Not shoot, sorry, not so much question, but just kind of support what Rob's saying. I don't remember all the details, but a couple of months ago, I read an article in our hometown paper that said almost identically what you were saying. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, they know the homeless who are under the bridges, but they can't count those kids who are couch surfing. And so nobody really has an idea. And I mean, so the article I read was very, very spot on what you're saying.
Thank you. And it's we had a student, my middle daughter, or one of her friends who I've known her whole life, great family. Her parents, they were friends of ours. But things got crossways at home, and she had to move out, and a lot of family strife and difficulties going on, and so she lived with us the last 4 or 5 months of her senior year. We helped her get graduated, but that's a real common thing. As soon as we did that, I had people telling me left and right, they've had a kid live with them to help them get through high school, and that's and of course she wasn't technically homeless, she wasn't qualified as homeless, but she didn't have a home, her own home. She could not go home to her own home, and so that's a real common scenario for a lot of kids out there.
Ed Milbrado, you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, I was pleased to hear that you're starting some efforts for non-college paths for your graduates. Have you considered, I'm sure you must have, working with some of your local unions to get into apprentice programs,
Right.
things like that?
Yes, sir. So that's exactly why we started we got in with this group that provides adult basic education through the Austin Community College, and it's that HVAC class and the electrical certificate and plumbing certificates and those things. We've got Central Texas right now has a very robust construction industry, trade industry, because building there are new homes being built every minute of the day, and people are moving in left and right. So that's a huge need area for tradesmen, for trades folks. And so we say our plumbers are our new millionaires, and they really are. And if we can get kids into that, get that training, I mean, they're gonna do well. They're gonna they'll far surpass the living wage. They'll actually be able to buy a home in Georgetown and have a family and all those things. And so we're working with some of those, and that's one reason we did this. We're working with some of those construction companies and some of the big developers, because they need employees. And so that's why we started that youth employment program, actually, was to get kids into those scenarios. And so those folks are, they're good supporters as well. We've got some folks that donate money through, or their construction companies donate money and develop, site prep people and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that is, here it's a great route to go. And I think only 15, I don't know what the statistic is anymore, but at one point it's only maybe 20% of the jobs in the United States actually require a college degree. And so when you think about that, and here in Texas we're trying to send every kid to college. I mean, it's a lofty goal, but at the end of the day, if you've got a trade certificate and you can pull wires as an electrician, they're going to make more money than I do, or than I ever have, and they're going to have a great career and a great life. So yeah, definitely, I feel like getting kids skilled trades, if they're willing to do it and willing to work hard, that's a win for the community and a win for them.
Fred Crawford, you had some questions? You're on mute, Fred. Unmute yourself, Fred.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, I did. With the project, the Georgetown Project, seems like you have a large portfolio and a lot of different parts to the portfolio. And my question is, I, as you had said, most of them are supported by donations or by grants. And
Right.
how is the grant vision for you? Is it stable or is it going down? What's the situation?
So it's some of both. We do have some stable grants. We've got we're very fortunate that we have a grant from the Episcopal Health Foundation and the Texas Methodist Foundation that run and pretty well fund our Bridges to Growth, which is our early childhood and parenting program. We have some other family foundations that support the nests, and so funding for nonprofits is hard because lots of folks don't want to give general funding or they don't want to give the salaries. And I always tell people, you got to pay people to do the work. So, as much as we love what we do, I have to go feed my kids and pay for them to go to college too, just like everybody else. So, a lot of grants that we get and a lot of funding is restricted, and they want it to be program specific only. And so we get those, and that's great. That helps us run the program. But I've got 4 staff members at the nest that I have to pay a salary to and help. And we've got folks that we contract. We pinch every penny. But I mean, we have to find funding for those things. And so we have seen some of the grant funding drying up a little bit this year, especially, and in the fall as well. The economy and things in certain places it's rocky, and so we've had donors they're still helping us, but they're instead of a check for $20,000, we can only do 10,000 this year. Hey, we're grateful for that. So whatever people can give, that's amazing and wonderful. But we're seeing that more and more where people are really having to kind of cut back, and so we're having to cut back too. And so we're the Georgetown Project it was created to serve all these needs in the community. So it's kind of like being in a hailstorm and you've got stuff all the time. A lot of programs like, say, the Boys and Girls Club, they do one thing. They run an after-school program and that's it. We do about 10 things. And so, there's lots of different grants for different things. And so managing all that is quite a feat. I'm very thankful I have a program director who's a lot smarter than I am, and she's able to keep all that straight. But we're constantly reapplying for grants and applying for new ones and looking for funding. And so we're about 65% grant funded from large foundations or foundations like the Episcopal Health, the Georgetown Health Foundation. And then we're about 20% funded from some local family foundations. And then about 20% or so is fundraising, where we do events and try to raise money that way. But I will say that as far as funding goes, we do work with some folks who are receiving federal funding, who were receiving federal funding that are not now, and that's really a challenge. That's going to cause food banks to dry up and things like that. So we are concerned about some of the lack of funding that's coming down from federal and state level.
What kind of fundraising projects do you have?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What kind of fundraising projects do you do?
So we're pretty creative. We have end of year giving campaigns and things like that, where we have folks that donate monthly or donate yearly for us. We just hosted a pickleball tournament. I don't know if any pickleball players are out there, but that's the big new thing in Georgetown, and everybody loves to play. So we put on a pickleball tournament and raised some money, and got a lot of good community. A lot of community participation out of it as well. We try to do things like that bring people together. And so we have a big, the typical once a year gala as well, or soiree kind of event. Ours is usually pretty fun, and we raise some. That raises a pretty decent amount of money, and then we'll have a deal that we'll do right around Christmas time where we'll raise some funds that way. And then what we do a lot of times, we really spend a lot of time working with some of the giving circles here in town. So I go present to groups who, they raise money to give to specific nonprofits or to specific in specific areas. And so we've done things. We throw dinner parties, whatever it takes. If people are willing to do it and want to be a part of it, and they're willing to be in it, then we'll jump in and do it.
Rob, one of the things that some of the projects that I've been associated with run into is when they make presentations like to the Lions Club or to the Rotary or whatever, is you talk about the kids dropping into the nest and you take care of laundry and food and place to study and feel safe. And then you say we help them out till about 9 o'clock. The question was is what do you do? What do you do with them afterwards?
So
And
that's a
that
good
was
question.
and then how do they get there? Transportation.
I'm glad you mentioned that, 'cause I wanted to mention that this is a really important factor, an important piece. You know, our local school district is very supportive, and so what we do, we have buses, we have transportation from the high schools to get the kids to the nest, you know, as soon as school's out, and then at the end of the night, when the kids are leaving about 8 o'clock, we have 2 school buses from the school district, and what we do as soon as the kids get to the nest, the kids will tell us that they write down an address where they want to go. The school district buses, we have 2 of them, and they'll do a route and they'll take those kids wherever they want to go. So what that means is you know, a kid's sleeping on this this friend's house tonight, their couch, and so they're going to go to that house tonight. We've got a bus that'll take them there. Tomorrow night they're sleeping on somebody else's couch, and so tomorrow they'll give us a different address and we'll take them there. That's a big part of our program, having that transportation piece, because it does make it then where kids are, you know, they do want to be anonymous a little bit. They don't want to share that they're homeless or they don't have a place to go. So this way, they don't have to do that. They tell us privately where they want to go. That bus will take them anywhere they want to go within Georgetown Independent School District, which is a pretty wide amount. It's a pretty large area, but you know, that's a critical piece. The fact that the school district does that for us, that's kind of their in-kind donation to our program. That's a game changer, and that's something that, you know, if people can do that where you have transportation somewhere home. What happens a lot of times, I've had kids who they don't know yet until, you know, mom or dad will text them or call them, or whoever they're staying with will call them and say, we're staying at Aunt Susie's house tonight, so that's where you need to come tonight, or we're staying at, you know, someone else's house tomorrow night. And so anyway, they'll go to the you know, I've had kids that are staying in cars, and so they of course don't want people to know that, and so they'll ride the bus to the library, and that's where a parent will be in a car where they'll spend the night, you know. We also work to get kids transportation. We have a really great nonprofit here in Georgetown called Georgetown Free Bikes, and it's a group that gathers up used bicycles, and they fix them up, tune them up, and you know, make them look great and make them run well, and then they give them away free, and they give away thousands of free bikes to kids and folks, anybody who needs them for transportation. So we have a lot of kids that, you know, they're Georgetown's a pretty compact. I mean, it's spread out in some ways, but where a lot of the kids live, it's pretty central, and so we've got kids that can ride bikes to different places. So we try to get kids transportation that way as well. We provide Uber cards. The city of Georgetown has a teen program that they can get an Uber account, and it's through the company Uber itself. And so the city of Georgetown helps subsidize that, and then we give kids gift cards. You know, we do fundraisers to get gift cards, actually, and give kids HEB gift cards, grocery store gift cards, food gift cards. You know, but Uber cards are a priority too, because kids, you know, they oftentimes need to get to, you know, they need to be able to get from one place to another, and there's not busing or transportation here in Georgetown.
Tom Hester, you had a question.
I do. I'm interested in this 100% of the participants graduated from high school.
Right.
I've seen high schools in which at least half of the kids have moved on, particularly in migrant situations in West Texas and so on and so forth.
Right.
How do you calculate that 100%?
Well, so we know the kids really well. They're coming. You know, we have a pretty small number. We have 25 to 30 every afternoon. So we have our social worker that works with us. We've we case manage all these kids. So we follow up with them. We have their contact information, their parent information, and we work closely with the school district. So we actually will have a graduation party here in a couple of weeks for all of our seniors that are graduating. But we're there at the graduation when they walk across the stage. So we make sure they get there. And we make sure they walk across the stage. I just bought 60 cap and gowns for one of the high schools that had a lot of kids that couldn't afford to buy one, and we bought about 25 for our nest kids this last week as well. But
Do you have a tutoring program at all, or
we do? Yeah, we do. We have mentors that come in and help tutor. We've got technology, computer laptops and things like that. Kids can access if they need them. Printers and all that stuff. So kids can come to the project, to the nest, and work on their projects after school. If they've got an English project or a social studies project, they'll come, and we've got folks that'll come in. We've got we have interns from Southwestern University that come in every afternoon as well, and they're great tutors, and they'll help the kids, with statistics and stats, things like that I certainly can't help them with. But we've got some really good college kids that come in and volunteer, and then we've got some other high school kids. We've got some that are, they come and volunteer as well. They're really invested in this program and want to help their friends, and that's how how this started. Actually, was through a youth summit that the Georgetown Project did about 15 years ago, and it was the high school kids themselves telling us that their friends needed a place to stay at night. So that's really how the nest formed. But we've got a lot of support in the community, and we do a lot of tutoring, and we help kids get scholarships. I just gave out $15,000 in scholarships, so that was really cool to be able to do for kids to get to go to school, and we try to help them get more. And there's
a lot of carrots involved in getting them to that stage.
There are, for sure. And I think because we feed kids every night, we feed them a really great dinner, and we've got really caring people who are there. The kids love to come. They consider the nest their home, or it's like a home away from home. And so it's a fun place too. We have games and I don't know, pool table and ping pong table and all that stuff. So it's trying to make kids have as normal of an experience as they possibly can in a situation that it's not ideal for them. And so
thank you. That's terrific.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
What do you do about health maintenance and shots and those type of things?
So we have a Lone Star, so it's called Lone Star Circle of Care. It's a clinic here in town, and it's a health clinic through the county and the state. It's a nonprofit as well, so it serves folks and it will provide care for kids. We get kids set up with them a lot. There's a free pediatric clinic in Austin. It's the only one in the state of Texas, and we refer kids to them as well, and they can get kids in within about 2 days. We've got some local doctor who will come and do things like sports physicals. So when kids, because we try to keep them in their sports or whatever they're doing. I just bought archery equipment for a kid who's on the archery team at Georgetown High School, and we help them get their sports physical as well, and if they need medical care, we try to get them picked up with Lone Star. Or Texas has the SNAP program, which is it helps somewhat with health care for kids. It's not well funded, but it's something. But we've got some groups that also do free immunizations and that kind of shots, and we bring them in as well, or get kids to them. And we get kids in things too, like we just had an art show, and had an art guild create a really cool program for our kids, and so in addition to healthcare, we're also trying to do things that are social, emotional, help with mental health, and get kids social skills and all those kinds of things. We're every which way we can do it, we're trying to support them.
Yeah. Rob, do you have any kids that need emergency housing overnight for any period of time? How do you deal with that?
We do. So that's another thing the Georgetown Project does. Another one of my jobs. We provide emergency shelter for Georgetown ISD students, or Georgetown students, and so I'll have a family that'll call. Usually, what it is, it's a high school counselor that will call, or a school counselor that'll call. It's generally Friday afternoon at 4:00, always, and they'll tell us they've got a family, who there's a high school kid, a middle school kid, an elementary school kid, and they're getting evicted that afternoon, and they need a place to go, and or they've been kicked out of wherever they've been, and so what we'll do is we'll go meet them at one of the local hotels. We've got deals with some of the more affordable hotels that are still they're nice, safe, clean hotels, but they're not. It's not the Hilton, but yeah, they're we have partnerships with them where we can get hotel rooms for folks, and we provide up to 7 nights. So we'll provide 3 or 4 nights first, and try to get a family, to move on to the next thing, which is we have a program called, an organization called the Caring Place here in Georgetown that does help with apartments and things like that. And so we try to get them through till they can get to that organization, but we can provide up to 7 nights. There's a Texas Baptist Children's Home in Round Rock has a program called Home Base where they've created apartments for kids who they can, there's an intake process and all that, but they'll actually provide housing for them to try to help them finish school. And so with emergency shelter, it's challenged because there's not a lot, and those things are expensive too. So we don't have shelters here in Georgetown. We did have churches create some cold weather shelters this last year, and that's one of the first times that's ever happened, really. But when we had really, really cold weather, we do have some cold weather here every so often, and so there was trying to get folks into the cold weather shelters at the churches was the priority. But we do provide a lot of emergency housing for families and kids, and we'll also help kids get hooked up with. There's some families here in town that are willing to, let a kid stay for the night if they need to, and those are families that have been background checked, and they're typically foster families. Actually, we'll sometimes do that, and so we try to find any kind of possible way to help kids get some support.
Well, that's good.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot. Yeah.
Good.
Any other questions or comments? Rob, we thank you for the time that you've spent with us. I appreciate you parking on the side of the road to talk to us. And
I'm in the Starbucks parking lot, so we're safe.
Good. One of the things that I was hoping that the brothers that were attending the webinar tonight would be to think about going to your communities or your chapters and finding out how you could find a similar organization that Rob runs in your community to see if you could do some service projects with them or help them out, just like you would Scouts or any other project, because that's one of our areas of focus. And so it's something to think about and something that you can investigate locally as a service project, whatever. Any other questions, final comments, Rob, you want to share or advice?
I think your point about getting, and I know this is a group of people that are already very involved in communities, but I think we encourage people to get involved in their community and reach out to their school districts, support the local schools, and especially specific opportunities like for kids that are homeless. We always say, we tell people, bring gift cards. If we can get kids, we buy clothes for kids and things like that. So, I think if you talk to your local school district and find that I would bet that there's probably a program in every community just about in some form or fashion that helps kids through these times. And so I would start with your school district, with the school counselors, typically, or school administrators. They'll know as well. The local police department typically knows as well, but the school's a good place to start to try to get involved with an organization like ours. And I think I think organizations like ours are popping up all over the country because the needs are there, and I think finally people are starting to realize, yeah, we do have homeless kids in our community, and we do have these problems, and but I think being an advocate for them, that's probably one of the most important things you can do, is helping people understand that because a kid or a family is homeless, it doesn't mean that they're they're worth any less than anybody else. They still have worth and value, and we need to support them and help them. And so I think if we can advocate for folks, and try to help them get a leg up and get the resources they need, I think that's hugely important.
Good.
Thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate
I
your
can-
time and
I
question.
can take us out if you want.
Sure.
Well,
Thank you.
you all again. I appreciate y'all spending the time with
You
me
bet.
tonight.
Thank you, Rob.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Rob.
Let us pray. Life is short, and we do not have too much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel with us. So be quick to love, make haste to be kind, and may the blessing of the one who made us, the one who loves us, and the one who travels with us be with you and those you love this day and always. Amen.
Amen. Peace, brothers.
Peace. Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Thanks, Rob. We'll be in touch.
Thank you again.
Thank you.